Now a little bit about our presenter. From his roots in a small Maryland farming town to his tenure in such great Philadelphia kitchens as LaCroix at the Rittenhouse, Townsend, and Ellen, Chef Billy Riddle taps a diverse range of culinary ability to deliver exciting food, seamless service, and above all, personal care. He is co-chef and partners with Jennifer Carroll in both of their companies, Carroll Couture Cuisine and Spice Finch. Together, they strive to make a lasting impression on the heart, soul, and palate through bespoke service, intimate experiences, and made-to-measure education and custom partnership. His lifelong love of connection through hospitality motivates him to proudly give back to his community and support many charitable organizations, including the American Brain Foundation, No Kid Hungry, and Alex's Lemonade Stand. We're so excited to welcome Chef Billy Riddle. Over to you, Billy.
So welcome to our studio. We're going to be making a couple things today. We're going to start off by making the pickled peppers. This is a dish my grandfather made with me and my cousins around the table. He would grow banana peppers, and he literally just added two ingredients together, and this is the quickest pickle that you can potentially make ever. So we have a couple. So we have some long hots here and some orange bell peppers. Some of these ingredients I got from my local market, and others I got from the garden just outside from where we live in Philadelphia. And we also have some Fresno peppers. This recipe in particular is really good for peppers specifically because all of this, we're adding just straight distilled vinegar straight to this mix. All of this, all of the liquid can be used as like a dressing. Like if you want to have a flavored vinegar, this is the jam. This is the situation. So I'm gonna start cutting some stuff up. And Emily, if you have any questions or anything you want to ask me, I'm good. But when you're cutting peppers for pickling, just cut them to like nice size rings. And make sure you're wearing gloves. I'm not going to be touching my face, but little rings are good because you want them to pickle quickly. If you cut them too thick, it's going to take too long. So cut these up. And you can also
use something besides cider vinegar.
What's that?
Laura is asking, can you use something besides cider vinegar, or besides distilled vinegar? Or could you use cider vinegar?
You could just make sure that the pH is low, like low enough so it's like very acidic. If something's on the opposite end of the spectrum, it won't be as shelf stable, and you might want to refrigerate it. And it also might take longer to pickle. So yeah.
As you're cutting, are you heating the peppers?
So if you don't want your peppers, it's a great question. If you don't want your pickled peppers to be very hot, you can deseed them and rinse them out slightly. But over here in our house, we definitely love heat, and we want it at all costs and all times. So I have in front of us so my grandfather would always add distilled vinegar and parsley with a little bit of olive oil to his pickles. So every time you would reach in, it was pretty much like just dressed. So you can chop it up, you can break up the parsley and just add it in. You also can use dry parsley too. We have some cloves of garlic. I did about 2 cloves of garlic. The amount of parsley was like maybe a quarter bunch. Take the stem off if you want to. You don't have to. This dish in particular, Emily, is like something so rustic, and it's not supposed to be perfect by any means. What's perfect is when you eat it. It's just that simple. And then we have a little bit of dill weed. This is my addition to this dish, so I'm just gonna add a little pinch. And this is pretty much it. We're gonna be adding our vinegar and olive oil, and we're done. One thing I like to do when I have a bottle like this is I'll swirl it in a circle, and it makes like a cyclone, and it comes out real fast.
Hey, Billy, what was the last thing you added before the distilled vinegar? Was that dill you said?
Yeah, it was dill weed. So you can use fresh dill, I like for pickles, I like to use dried dillweed. It permeates better and longer. The oils are like very condensed, and as they sit longer, they just come through they come through softer. They're not very aggressive, and the pickle a little bit of like complexity. So I'm just gonna push it down lightly. I'm not trying to like smash it too hard. I just want the vinegar to completely cover the vegetables, and that's the most important thing. This jar specifically kind of creates that environment for us. But if you don't have enough vinegar, just add a little bit more. I have my second bottle just in case. And like I said, this vinegar is going to taste great. As you get done eating peppers, you're gonna want to use this for like I don't know, insane pickle backs, if that's a thing. I don't drink anymore, but I'm sure people out there do. So you can play around and test it with your friends. So this is pretty much, actually, hold on. A little olive oil on top. And like I said, the olive oil on top allows you to kind of have this nicely dressed, flavorful pickle coming out. And that's kind of it. So these are the pickles.
Oh, and Billy, talk to us about how you're going to store those.
So when I store these, there's so much vinegar in here, I can leave it out on the shelf. You could also put it in your refrigerator. If they're in the fridge, they'll last for the year at least. And I'm just going to put them over here because it makes for a great display and they're edible.
One more question. Shelf stable, how long would they be if they were not refrigerated?
I would say, like, personally, as long as they're covered in the cap like they are, or if you decide to can them, if you put that mixture into a mason jar and you did the traditional canning, they'll last for the year, and they'll be good on the shelf. The only difference would be they wouldn't be as snappy. With straight vinegar, the vegetables are very crisp without having to add that. I think it's a calcium additive that you pretty much get from like pickled cucumbers. They add that to keep them crispy. By just throwing them in vinegar like this, they'll last for a month as is. Just the only thing I say is if you're opening them and going in and out, make sure you use a utensil that's clean. Don't use your fingers or something that's dirty, because then you're going to want to refrigerate it.
And how long do you let them cook in that vinegar before you eat them?
So you can eat them as is right now. They're obviously the vinegar's not going to permeate through the vegetable as quickly as you'd like. So I would say half an hour to an hour to like start really eating them to get a little bit of the flavor from them. But tomorrow they're going to be great. Everyday pasta, they're going to be better. And if you want them like day of, you can just heat the vinegar up and pour them over top. The only difference is the texture in the vegetable is going to be different. It won't be as crispy. It'll have some bite, but it won't be as like fresh, crunchy.
Got it. Can you use green or yellow bell pepper?
I'm pretty sure you can use any pepper. It doesn't really matter. Also, if you have like squash in your garden, you can also add some squash. You can add onions. Like I added garlic to mine. You can kind of like make it a medley. There's an Italian word that's kind of escaping me, but it's just a giardiniera, I think. It's just like a medley of vegetables that are pickled, and it's this actual recipe is like it's up to you and like what you like. If you like sweet peppers, use sweet peppers. If you like hot peppers, use hot peppers. It's not gonna make a big difference. It's not about anyone else. It's about you and your friends and your family.
Thank you.
So, are we going to be going towards the pumpkin pumpkin butter now, Emily? Are we going to? Do you have any more questions?
Go for it. Yeah, sounds
Okay,
great.
so this is the most exciting thing I've been like doing all week, is like making a ton of recipes recently. I've been playing around with pumpkins. Our local grocery store has these really, really crazy, awesome pumpkins. For example, this is a Kong cob is what they called it. I don't know if there's another term for that. I'm sure there's a botanist that can tell me different. But it just looks super cool. It's really heavy, and they said it would be great in curries. But the pumpkin butter we're making today, we are using this beautiful Cinderella pumpkin. It's super tasty. It's not too, it's very clean. It's very sweet. It's a little nutty. It's really, really awesome. So in order to do that, we have some ingredients in front of us. We have sweetened condensed milk, and that's a cup of sweetened condensed milk, a cup of granulated sugar, and large diced peeled Cinderella pumpkin. We have this spice. It's called Baharat. You can also use pumpkin spice. Essentially, this is what this is. It's a Middle Eastern spice blend from a company called Labuat. I use them in a lot of recipes that I have. They have a whole bunch of different flavorful spice blends, specifically leaning more towards the Mediterranean. But this spice blend just works so well for this dish. And then some sea salt. So if you don't have sea salt, you can use kosher salt. I like to steer away from iodized salt just because I don't like the flavor, and I like it to be. I like the flavor of kosher and sea salt more. So, with that said, we're going to be making this recipe with a pressure cooker. If you don't have a pressure cooker, you can use a casserole pan, and you can also use what is it? A slow cooker, like do you have a slow cooker at home, Emily?
I don't. No.
So I have it over there. I should have brought it over with me. But like a slow cooker is just something you can use if you're not confident with using the pressure cooker. The pressure cooker is going to make this in a half an hour for us, whereas the slow cooker will make it this recipe in 6 to 8 hours. So we don't have that much time to do the full recipe here, but what you're going to want to do is put your pot on the stove, put it over medium to high heat, and we're going to be adding all of our ingredients. I'm not adding any oil. I'm going to allow the pumpkins to, once the sugar is added to it, it'll start drawing out some moisture, and it'll be sitting in its own little stew. So we're going to add the pumpkin first, and then we're going to add the sugar next. And just make sure that when you're adding it, you're kind of mixing it up a little bit so nothing's burning at the bottom. And then we're going to add our sweetened condensed milk. This is probably the most important part, because as this starts to cook, especially at high heat in the pressure cooker, it browns. It gets this like very nutty flavor. I don't know if anyone's ever made dulce de leche, but this is the when you basically take the can of sweetened condensed milk and boil it, it gets really brown and really nutty. This makes this dish what it is. I don't know if can you hear it cooking?
We could for a minute there.
So I got it mixed up. I'm adding my spice now. I believe this is a teaspoon. And a pinch of sea salt. Salt, in my opinion, is very important because it draws out a lot of flavor that you wouldn't get if it was just sugar, or if it was just, it makes things pop. Too much salt is also bad, but if you like pretzels, you understand pretzels and chocolate, you understand what I'm saying, and I think you get it. So I'm going to bring this over to you real quick, Emily. You can kind of, you can't really see it all. It's just like liquid mixture. The pumpkin's still raw. That's better. And we're just going to now cover this up and let the pressure cooker do its job. So when I use my pressure cooker is very it's very, I guess it's a manual. There's not much electronic device to it. They do have a lot of electric pressure cookers on the market, which are great because you can kind of hit a setting and just let it do its thing. But essentially what's going to happen is it's going to start building pressure up within the chamber. And this little, you can kind of hear it now. It'll start building up. As the pressure's built up, it'll escape through this valve up top and allow it to like let you know it's cooking. Once that happens, I'm going to reduce it to a very, very low heat, because if it goes full heat the entire time, it's going to burn on the bottom, which did happen to me before. That's why I'm letting you know that if you don't feel comfortable with this, you're more than happy to take a casserole pan, like a 9x12, whatever size that is. It's a very like typical shape, and just add all of those ingredients we added straight into the pan, and cover them with aluminum foil, and put them in your oven around 300 degrees, just to kind of get the chill off the vegetables and off of any ingredients we have. And then before like you go to sleep, you turn it down to, I think, above 200 degrees, because in a typical slow cooker, the lowest temperature is like 200 degrees. The highest is around 300 or a little above, like your standard slow cooker. So this is pretty much all you have to do besides blending. And I don't have any blending to show you. Is there anything you'd like me to discuss further, Emily, that maybe people might have questions about? Or
Yeah, Billy, there have been a few questions about where to get some of these ingredients. The first was, where do you find Cinderella pumpkin? And a couple of people were saying they've seen them at Whole Foods or seen them at farmers markets. Any other suggestions?
I think farmers markets are probably your best bet, because that's where I found mine. And it's like one of those things too, right? You go and get a pumpkin, like you get the pumpkin, and because it's very typical to get the jack-o'-lantern pumpkin, but every pumpkin for the most part, as long as it's out there and you're not too privy to it, just ask the person who's selling it, hey, can I eat this? And they're going to tell you, and that's pretty much it. So I found mine at a farmer's market, but I put links in my recipe that I added on my website, and they all go to Whole Foods. So if you have any questions for like where to find a pressure cooker, where to find a pumpkin, I believe the only pumpkin that was on Amazon site was kabocha, which is a Japanese pumpkin. You can kind of hear it start to seal up right now. But yeah, that's kind of where you can find them. It's I would definitely rely on your local farmers markets if you have one. If not, you can also just use your standard jack-o'-lantern pumpkin.
We had another question about the Baharat Spice. Can you get that at a chain grocery store, or where do you find it?
So in the recipe, I also added a link for that. You can get it online. It's Lebois, I think it's leboisnyc.com. But for all of the recipes, you'll see like it says Baharat with the underline. You can just click on that, and it takes you straight to that site. But I believe that's the only place you can purchase that specific spice blend. So right now the pressure has built up. Sorry, Emily, has built up all the way, and now it's starting to come through this little vent, and it's building more and more and more. Just to let you know what's going on right now.
We had a question that was, if you could talk about uses for the pumpkin butter.
Talk about what?
Ways that you would use pumpkin butter.
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. So on the same recipe that I've sent to everyone, I made this toast with ciabatta. I think this is the most. I don't think anyone's ever done this. This is why I think I like it so much. It's ciabatta toasted with butter, and I spread the pumpkin butter right on top and served it with black Moroccan cured olives, manchego cheese, and fried sage or fresh sage. It's so good. Like it's the best pumpkin toast I think I've ever had, and I actually never had pumpkin toast before. You can also use this for, what else can you use this for? It's pretty much, this dish is kind of like a pie filling minus the eggs. So you can fold it into ice cream. You can put it like right on top of pie crust. Now it's going crazy.
Yeah, we hear it now.
So right now, because the pressure's built up so well, I'm going to turn it down. But it's just like, personally, I think pumpkin butter on its own really just works so well on bread. I do like cheese because it's just something different, but you can eat it just straight as is. And it's not going to, like, you spend all this time making it, you might as well just eat it simply. Yeah, so this is going to go for half an hour, which we could wait around for. But this is pretty much it. We're going to take this mixture after it gets done cooking, and it's going to be soft and mushy. If you're doing the casserole version at home or like a slow cooker at home, it's just when it's really, really soft and it's pureeable is when you know it's done. And it's going to be transferred into a blender. You can use this old school blender, or you can use those fancy Vitamix blenders. It doesn't matter. If you like it chunky, it can be chunky. If you like it smoother, it can be smoother. Again, the world is your oyster.
Hey, Billy, we had a couple questions. One was about, do you have any tips for carving the pumpkin to get those pieces that you were working with?
I actually do. So we can kind of demonstrate that if you'd like me to.
Okay.
So with this pumpkin, just have an arsenal of tools hanging around everywhere. Sometimes it's very natural to kind of peel this way, like north to south with vegetables. With this specific pumpkin, I like to go like this, like around. And I think I like this pumpkin more because it's so cylindrical, and I don't have to worry about going around it. So I guess from a jack-o'-lantern pumpkin or a typical sweet pumpkin, and you can kind of just make one full swoop. I'm literally destroying my display for Halloween, but it's fine. And this is just the easy way. Once you get towards the center where it kind of concaves in, you can start cutting it in quarters. Because like right around now, it's not really peeling as much in the center because my peeler it's not curved, I guess. And then you would just take a knife So if you were trying to get like this section here, you would just take your peeler, because now I can actually get in here, right? But yeah, I think that's one thing. And like, I don't think many people see this pumpkin, so this is kind of cool that there's so much meat in this pumpkin. These are the seeds right here. It's so good for your yield too. If you don't have the luxury of having something like this, you can use with butternut squash too. Another farmer friend of mine tells me to use, this is called a long neck squash. He tells me to make my pies out of this because the yield is so high. And this right here is like $1.75 at the farmer's market, and it's huge. It's pretty much just a larger version of butternut squash.
We had a question. What do you have suggestions for what people can do with the seeds?
With the seeds, you could dry them out and just season them with like a little sugar or salt, whatever you like. Or if you're trying to do something a little bit more healthy, you can use just straight spice. Like I said before, Laboit has a lot of different variations of spices. We also have worked with him on many projects, so we know his spice blends very well, and they don't have any additive salts. They're just straight spice, and you can just coat your pumpkin seeds with the spices, and then lay them out on a piece of parchment paper. Throw them in your oven at like around 200 degrees, and let them dry. So you have this very flavorful seed you can like eat like a sunflower seed. And if you don't like the outside, you could I guess you could peel them, but that's kind of a pain. If you like peeling stuff, then you're fine. But if you don't like peeling stuff, I don't suggest it.
We had another question too. You brought the spices. Can you tell us what are the ingredients of that Baharat spice you were talking about?
Baharat should be cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, and there's I think two other that are escaping me right now. But it's pretty much it's kind of like a Chinese five spice. But all of the ingredients he gets are brought from the Mediterranean.
And Billy, can you
I,
remind us what temperature that's cooking at?
so the inside of this right now,
Yeah.
I don't know the temperature inside of the pressure cooker. I know it's really hot, but because we've lowered it, that's a really good question, Emily. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, cool.
Steam itself is very very hot. Boiling is 212. I do know that. But because it's all contained, it's
You said if we were,
it's a different environment.
if we were going to do that we would keep it at a low temperature.
I'm sorry.
Oh, if we were going to do it in the slow cooker
Yeah.
temperature, you said?
If you're doing it in the slow cooker, I would suggest there's typically a low, medium, high. I would say you start off on high or medium and drop it to low. And low should be around 200 degrees Fahrenheit. If you go lower, it's going to start getting close to the temperature danger zone. So keep it around 200 degrees and just let it go overnight. Yeah, I think this is one of the easiest ways to make this dish because you put it straight in the pot. You don't have to worry about stirring it. It's just ready to go to puree immediately when it's done cooking. Whereas when you do it on the stovetop, you want to check, you want to peek, but everything's very contained inside of this pressure cooker. There's nothing really to worry about.
And then, Billy, when that's finished, are you going to go through like a canning process with it? Is that something you typically do, or do you in the fridge? What are some of our storage options?
That is a great question. You can do your typical like preserving by putting them in jars and sealing them and boiling them. Like that's like it's pretty typical. I like to just put it in the fridge. In the fridge because it has so much sugar, it shouldn't spoil. I would say 30 days, but give it 14 just in case. 14 days just in the fridge uncovered. If you want to keep longer, you could also put them in bags or like I don't know if you have those food saver bags at home. I like to put my things in bags because once it's in a bag, I can lay them flat in the freezer, have them all labeled. If I don't, because I like to. I mean, jars are great, but this is a little bit this is less of a cost on your end. So having this in a bag is a little bit more easier for me. You also could. This is a chef trick. You can keep them in bags, and then you can have another pastry bag with a pastry tip on it. And what you do, because they've been doing this for years, you put this bag, you cut it, you put it inside your pastry bag with your tip, and you can pipe it out. So you can put it on your toast if you want to make it like less messy, and if you're done with it, you put it inside of a container, put a top on, and set it to the side, and you can use it all week.
And how would you say this process compares, say if you wanted to make apple butter or use some other sort of base ingredient, would the process be the same or what would you do differently?
I think it's pretty much the same because it's in this environment within the pressure cooker, all the ingredients tend to brown, like they caramelize very, very rapidly, which is great for pumpkin butter. If you're looking for this really dark, delicious pumpkin butter and you're not trying to evaporate the liquid, you want all of those juices to be contained. This would be a good option too if this is something you're comfortable with using, for sure.
We had a question from Melissa. She's asking, does using the pressure cooker versus the slow cooker change the flavor at all?
It shouldn't. If it gets close to, like, for example, I made mine and I feel like it made it a little bit more marshmallow flavored from, like, it was slightly caramelized, but I think it tastes better coming out of this machine, like out of this the pressure cooker, because I like that kind of flavor. I like the hint of caramelization versus just pumpkin. So I don't know. I guess the flavor's a little different. And I'm just kind of moving it around a little bit too, so I can feel that it's still like liquidy. But I don't suggest doing that.
Yeah, I was wondering is there something to do with needing to?
Please don't shake your pressure cooker. let's just so we're gonna open it right now. We'll see where we're at. It's probably not done, and that's okay. But when I take the top off, I'm going to turn off my heat. Like I said, the newer versions of a pressure cooker they're much easier to deal with. You don't have to deal with this stuff. But if you have this older model, which is a little bit more affordable sometimes, turn off the heat. You can kind of slightly press the valve on top. And all of the steam that's been trapped inside is going to escape. This is the best thing you could do when you're trying to flavor your whole entire apartment up or house. Because it now smells like fall. A little essence of pumpkin spice. Move over, Yankee Candle. If you don't feel comfortable doing this, you can take a spoon. You can also take a spoon and hold it further away. There's obviously bigger spoons you can use too. But we're just trying to decrease the pressure. Once the pressure is decreased, there is a safety valve on here that will unlock and allow us to open it. Because I can't open it when it won't even let me open it if I tried to when the pressure is built up. So the pin just drops, the locking pin drops, and I can open it up. Hold on real quick. Let me move some lights around so you can see it. So you can kind of see the sweetened condensed milk starts to look like ricotta cheese, and that's completely fine. But this is very liquidy right now. The liquid would reduce by half from where it's at the moment, and we would just puree it. So once it is pureed, it will come out just like this. I kind of feel like it's a little lighter than what you usually see from pumpkin butter typically at the store. I feel like it's usually very dark brown, but because of the sweetened condensed milk, it kind of makes it this tan color. Um, this is the best pumpkin butter I've ever had. So if you're questioning or on the fence, just try it. You're gonna thank me later.
That's really good.
And if anyone else has questions, you're more than happy to ask me on my Instagram. I'm sure that the botanical gardens can share that with you. If you do have any questions, I'm always available to talk to. And my fiance Jennifer, she's the same. So if you ever have any cooking questions, just reach out to us and direct message us. We're very happy to help because we want to teach you what we know because we don't have the opportunity right now, considering it's the times are now when we can't really see other people as much as we like to.
Thanks, Billy. I just posted Billy's Instagram in the chat and also his website if you want to keep following him or keep up with work. And I think at this time we can take some general questions if people had questions about the pickles, if you had other questions about the pumpkin butter. I'm happy to take more questions. Any other things you might want to challenge Billy with? We'll just open up the floor to see your questions in the chat. And I had a question maybe to start off, Billy.
Sure.
You had said for if you wouldn't have a pressure cooker or a slow cooker, could you do an oven roast and how would you do that?
So yeah, you can totally do the oven roast. Like I said, you can use a casserole pan or whatever pan you have that can be covered and allow the pumpkin to kind of be more laid out than piled up. So that way it kind of cooks very slow and evenly. If it's piled up, it's not going to cook as quickly as we need with a low temperature. And the low temperature is really what we're looking for to kind of really caramelize that sweetened condensed milk.
Thanks. We have a question from Jessica. Can I use any other fruit in the butter?
Can you use any other fruit in the butter? Like, could you do is the question, can you like add like a blend? Like, could you do apple and pumpkin or could you do something else? Okay.
Yes, that's what she said.
I guess you could. Like, I don't see why you couldn't. Maybe make this recipe first and dabble around. I'm interested to find out what that would look like too. You could do an apple pumpkin blend. I think that would be kind of tasty too. Give you a lot more layers and complexity to it. Even quince, just anything you find at the market. It's similar to the peppers within reason. I wouldn't go super crazy because you definitely want to taste the pumpkin. At least when I have any like pumpkin butter, I want to make sure it tastes like what I'm eating. I always tell the cooks at the restaurant where I work, like, it's better to have less than more sometimes. Keep it simple because especially with this pumpkin, we're gonna get the most out of it as we can. But yeah, apples. I think apples.
Somebody's asking about persimmons. What would be the uses of persimmons?
I think persimmons could be a good option as well. That sounds really good. They might come out a lot sweeter depending on what kind of persimmons you're using, but I think that would be an interesting addition for sure.
Great. Do you have other ways that that you've used persimmons in your cooking? Just thinking about sort of seasonal ingredients and things people might be seeing coming in now.
Yeah, I don't typically use persimmons that often. I tend to like eat them when they're raw, or I'll cook them down slightly. It's not an ingredient that I use a lot, but when I do eat them, I do enjoy them. I have not made like a persimmon butter before, but I see the ability of doing it though.
Great. Shayla was asking, what other recipes do you like to make with pumpkins?
So recently this is kind of cool. Recently I made a juice pumpkin and made this mocktail, and it was really, really interesting. It was black lime with juiced pumpkin and tangerines, because at the grocery store that I go to, my local grocery store, they have a lot of fresh vegetables and fresh citrus. So it just made sense, and it was so good and simple. Uh, I don't think I've ever had that combination before either. Let's see if there's anything else. You can also, with the same ingredients, which is probably pretty good. You could slow roast the pumpkin itself with the spice and serve it with dulce de leche on top, or what's it called, cultured cream. Cultured cream, it would be really good too.
But you mentioned juice pumpkins. What are juice pumpkins?
So I literally took this pumpkin and put it through my juicer, and I strained it out with cheesecloth or like just a napkin, and it came out super clear. I actually made some jelly out of it too. Jen's gonna go get me the stuff in the fridge because it's far away from here. But I made a pumpkin jelly too. It's just different. Like I like to I like to experiment a lot, and that was definitely an experimentation. But it came out really good. I added vanilla. Thank you, Jen. So this particular recipe, I don't have this written down anywhere. I just kind of did it. But this is pumpkin jelly. It's kind of like when you make I don't even know if you've ever made watermelon jelly or pepper jelly. You have to add calcium to the pectin. Yeah, that looks cool. You have to add like calcium to the pectin, which gives it this jelly like flavor, this jelly texture. But you literally just juice the pumpkins with your standard juicer and push it through a strainer.
Very interesting. I never thought of that.
Right? So one big thing that I like to do personally is when I have an ingredient, I like to see different ways I can use it. It helps me understand like how to not waste it, which I think is a really important thing to do too.
Any other things that you're seeing at the farmers market lately that might be experimenting with at home?
Well, at our farmers market, I don't know where he's sourcing all of his ingredients. They're great. It's better than Whole Foods. He's getting fresh yuzu from Pennsylvania. The citrus is starting to slowly come in. I saw he had pomegranates recently. I know the Botanical Gardens has pomegranate trees, which if no one's ever been to the Botanical Gardens in Washington D.C., you have to go. It's the one thing that it makes me so happy when I enter. You sit around the fountain. There's just so much there. But they had persimmons there. They had a lot of mums. Like I know that's not food, but it sure is great to have outside. And what else did they have?
All kinds of fruit trees, Asian pears. He's thinking of for the visited in Bartholdi Garden, where the kitchen garden is. So right behind the conservatory, all the edible plants you'll see there around the kind of perimeter of the tip of that garden. There's a whole bunch of fruit trees. So now
yeah, and I also there's a lot of great figs out too. So if you're looking for figs, they're definitely out there as well. Am I frozen? Can you hear me, Emily?
I think I was frozen for a minute.
Okay.
Jessica had one more question. Her question got cut off. How about adding nuts? You ever add nuts? Are you talking about, I think, to the pumpkin butter?
Jessica's on to something. I like Jessica. She's good. Originally, when I was thinking about this recipe in particular, I was going to add like chopped nuts inside of it, like chopped almonds, which would be great texturally and would make just so much sense. It wouldn't take away from the pumpkins at all. So if you wanted to like toast pumpkin or toast almonds and fold them into your pumpkin butter, like just right inside of this, it'll be like a sweeter, chunky peanut butter, essentially. just a whole different. I don't think peanut butter compares to this, but I think texturally it can.
Great, thanks. And then Laura is asking, what got you interested in cooking and how did you get into sort of the culinary field?
Well, for cooking, my grandparents really introduced me to cooking. Like I feel like most chefs will say, I learned from my grandparents, learned from my grandparents, because every kid gets tossed to their grandparents so they can play and like spend time. But my grandmother, she cooked everything, and my grandfather didn't cook much, like the peppers that I was showing you earlier. That's one of the only recipes he had ever made, and he also cooked smelt. But I think through them, it made me care so much about creating food for people, and got me interested in it at all. Like when I can feed somebody and make them happy, it's the best thing that I can receive. I don't need anything else.